Thank you for the invitation. Really, really happy to be here. I also recognize some faces. There's others that I don't recognize as much. My name is Raul Ferrer-Conill. I'm a professor of journalism here at the Institute for Media and Social Sciences. And you would think, like, so what is a professor of journalism doing talking about AI? And for the last 10 years of my work, I've been looking at how data and datafication processes have affected the news media and journalism. And for the most part, we were talking about robot journalism, algorithms, computational journalism. For the last 3 to 4 years, we've mostly been talking about AI. So everything that used to be automation, algorithmic journalism has now become basically AI. And I've been running the Digital Society Master's Program, and now we run an AI and Society course. So I'm engaged more and more. I have a fairly limited knowledge of the nitty-gritty of the technology, but I do have a fairly decent understanding about how the processes work. The other thing that you might think about is, like, so why being critical at all? And I'm not being critical just to be critical. I'm bringing with me a background tradition from sociology, critical theory, from this jolly group of people who are mostly dead except for Jürgen Habermas, who's still alive. I think it's 95 or something like that. But basically, this approach tries to analyze and critique societal structure, dynamics of power, how does it relate to different societal structures, and especially with truth and knowledge seeking. And also from the perspective of critical technology studies, which brings in the implications of technology for society. So it's not just me being a grumpy white dude, but rather trying to bring this type of analysis. On top of that, I think that a technology that their creators start talking about the P-doom. This is the probability of the technology going wrong and destroying humanity, also grants that idea of maybe having a little bit of a critique of the technology. The other reason as well is for something like this. When most of the producers and proponents of AI start discussing about whether we should have a moratorium on AI research, and then seeing the backlash into no, we're not going to do anything about it, and we actually should not regulate AI at all. And seeing this discussion happening from the people who are actually running AI makes also the call for a critical examination of AI. Finally, the power, right? The people who are running the tech companies that, as we will see in a moment, are running most of the AI companies are more and more entangled with political power, more and more entangled with too much money. So I thought that if AI has so much going for it in terms of popularity, money, power, a little bit of scholarly critique probably wouldn't be much of a problem. Final thing, this idea of the Silicon Valley people, the tech bros, having a completely different set of values to those of the ones in which we operate here at the university. The idea of moving fast and breaking things is not necessarily aligned with democratic values that we tend to have here. So this is kind of like the standpoint of the talk that I'm going to give. And my talk is not alone. This is the 7th talk. Some of you might have seen all of them. All of them are on YouTube, so go check them out. But of all the 6 previous speakers, only Ariel started by saying that he started into AI because he was afraid of it. And only Natalia had a slight comment that was critical of AI. All of the other talks had no critical views or mentions at all about AI. They looked into the technology, and that is fine. These people are the ones that I would consider that are on the AI for social good, right? This attempt of trying to make AI something that is valuable for society, something that it is going to solve meaningful problems and going to make life better. At the same time, I think that that is not good enough. AI for good focuses on the outcome and not so much about the technology. That means that it raises questions about good for whom? What is good? What are the long-term consequences? What about the individual versus the collective? A lot of different questions that I think that remain unanswered. So what I'm going to basically talk about today are the information environment, the idea of creation of knowledge, and the problem of a shared reality. These, I think, are many of the main threats that AI pose to our current societies. And I only have 30 minutes, so I could have been speaking about many more. I'm not talking about the environmental issues. I'm not talking about specifics about the economic bubble that is coming. So there's a ton of different things. I chose to talk about these three. Also because they are the most connected to the work that I do and most connected to the media environment. The first one about the information environment, this is pretty much connected about how we used to create knowledge. Up until recently, the most legitimate sources of knowledge creation were news organizations. They were very, very flamboyant about creating that idea that news organizations bring truth, news organizations are what shed light into democracy. Even the Washington Post, with the typical democracy dies in darkness. After the acquisition of Jeff Bezos, they changed it to this specific one. But the whole point is, what is going to replace journalists, or what has been replacing journalism in the new information environment? And a lot of it has to do with the platformization of AI. All the AI the generative AI not only has exploded, but has become almost impossible to keep track of. This is just one tiny overview of some of the apps available out there, but there are thousands, right? And they all do some kind of generative process. They all are extractive in nature. That means that they are building on data that is available online. That means that for the most part, they are just taking data and using it for their own gain. The other issue is that most of the bigger players are the usual suspects, right? The big development comes from these few companies, even though we have all these fragmented landscape. Now, what is the issue between this transition from journalism to platforms and AI platforms? For the most part, you would say, well, it's not like journalism was great, and I totally agree. Fairly critical about journalists as well. I'm lots of fun. The thing is, this new format, it basically maximizes engagement and does it by making a personalization of that. The AI companies and systems tend to learn from us, learn through our prompting, learn through our data behaviors, and start creating things that just maximize that engagement. The reason for that is because so far engagement is what provides most of the money. And then we see things like engagement farming, where in social media we have a bunch of bots that are just putting out content in the sake of generating some kind of traction. And you would say, well, they make a very little money. Yes, but because AI has a capacity of scaling up for relatively little more expenditure, what happens is that we see much more of this appearing, and the aggregate of the little money that each of these expressions of engagement farming create quite a bit of money. And why is this a problem? Well, Musk directly saying, well, we're going to fix this because AI is going to fix all of this other AI. AI is going to police AI. This was in 2023. 1 year later, he's still talking about how AI is going to fix all of this problem. And this is his platform. He has full control, and instead what it's done, it's just removing all human intervention. We see this not only on social media, we see it on products and how we relate and make decisions. This is not a critique of us as individuals. I also, before going to a restaurant, check the reviews and make decisions on that, even though I know that there is a big chance that some of these are fake. But we're starting to structure the information that we get through these kind of processes. A similar thing, AI slop becoming a big problem. For those of you who don't know what AI slop is, it's just basically low budget content created by AI that serves just as, again, engagement traction, trying to get more content out there so that we can collect as much eyeballs, right, and visits. Now, why is this happening? Well, because it's easy and because it is profitable. So for as long as it's easy and profitable, there's going to be actors that are going to use this. So not so much AI for good in this case, but it becomes an added problem. For the most part, the way that AI works is bringing good data, putting it into a repository and training a model that will somewhat create something. But the problem of this is that the output is as good as the input is as good. So one of the things that is happening now with AI is that we have more and more content, more and more believable content, but not more accurate content. So it's becoming more difficult to figure out whether things are true or not, or at least AI generated or not, but they are not getting better. One of the theories about this is because the data on which it's being trained is not better. And there is a concern that if slop, because the general amount of content on the internet, that we might be training models on bad data, and therefore the content will remain crappy. So it comes again, that idea of breaking things, right? Is AI going to kill the internet? And there's an idea for why this would happen. I personally don't think that it's going to kill the internet, but it's going to make it worse. It's already making it worse. If we look, for example, at Google, adding Gemini to Google has already proven that people are clicking less to the sources of data, which means that there's less incentive for content producers to make websites, because if Google is just going to take the information presented and people are not going to click, we're not going to make money out of it. So think of it in terms of time and scale. What incentive is there to create data? And most of that incentive is going to be just by generating through AI, so that AI will be informing itself. Or think about the idea of creating knowledge specifically through AI. And this is what Elon Musk is claiming that wants to do through the Grokpedia. And Grokpedia is nothing more than an attempt to rival Wikipedia for more political reasons. Most of the point that Musk wants to portray is that Wikipedia is a left-leaning bastion of knowledge, which it's a little bit insane. But anyway, he's trying to make his counterpart, that it's going to provide much more right-leaning content, that it's entirely produced by AI. So this brings me to the next point, which is the creation of knowledge. If we learn about what is true or what is the world about comes from AI, how do these epistemic processes work? For the most part, the old sources of knowledge that we've had have been either books, norms, rituals, oral tradition, anything that we want, and the idea has come that regular epistemology, for those of you who are not familiar with this, it's about trying to convey a sense of truth, something that is happening there, and then turn it into knowledge. And that's in between this idea of truth, which I'm a social constructivist, so I don't necessarily think that there is one specific truth, but there is certainly specific knowledge. And how do we transition from that to belief? This is not very unlike how AI works, where it takes some data and then turns it into information and eventually into knowledge. And some parts of AI manages very well with certain processes. Some of it is not particularly good. That means that when we come into processes of decision making, if the data that we have is not good, then that decision making is going to be based on information and knowledge that is not good. Why does this matter? Well, think of it about who makes the decision for what are our knowledge sources. If our sources of knowledge traditionally have been human-led, and now we let them to AI, then they might be informed just by AI. And AI normally builds this idea of the single source of truth, which is an attempt of creating a massive database that puts together all this data in order to inform the LLMs. And right now, it's very difficult to see this happening, but I still remember telling our students that Wikipedia was not a good source of information. That has almost like, they cannot quote Wikipedia, but that's a good place to go and find sources. It wouldn't surprise me if we continue at this pace that in 20 years, it's like just ask ChatGPT and that's fine. Our university has already dropped Copilot to all our students, just saying, hey, now you have Copilot, without telling them how to use it. And then we're all freaking out about, shit, there's books that are not existing in all the literature reference lists that we use now, and wonder why. So this is definitely one of those issues to come. So we don't know what happens or what to do when AI hallucinates. None of my, or very few of the colleagues that talked about AI in the AI talks discussed this. The idea that there's a bunch of things that are not correct when we check AI, and that we need to make some kind of adjustment and assessment when this happens. And the reasons for this might be human issues, bad prompting, bad data, but there's a lot of randomness that we don't entirely know. This is what renders AI also slightly different than other technologies that we know, because there are certain parts of the process that are left to the machine to do. And that's one of the geniuses of AI, but it's also one of the problems of AI. Just to give you an example, for those, I'm sure that most of you know about this, but for those of you who don't know, this is Microsoft A, one of the first AIs developed in 2016, released into Twitter in 2016, and it went from this almost genderless bot that would be very nice and like lovely and really liking human beings, and in the span of 24 hours, it just lost it. And it just lost it because it met humans. And there's nothing worse than human beings. There's nothing better than human beings. But for the challenge of destroying something, we will also always rise to that challenge. So TIE in 24 hours was met with people, trolls, who just fed it bad information. And it just learned from it, to the point that it had to be removed because it just went crazy. But it doesn't have to be as niche as TIE was. This is from an Australian case about 4 weeks ago, where Deloitte created a report, $400,000, and a bunch of pages were completely wrong because they were directly from AI. What did Deloitte do? Give some money back. That's pretty much it. And we continue to work with this. This is not just happening, by the way, it says Albanese government. This is because the Prime Minister of Australia, his surname is Albanese. Just it's not from Albania, this is actually in Australia. We had the same problem here in Tromsø, when a report of how to reduce some schooling had used AI, and there were some data that was completely wrong. And this is how we build our knowledge. So if the reports that are going to help us with decision making at the governance level are wrong, then what are we going to do? This leads me to this idea of fragmenting reality, or more like an ontological idea. This harkens back to journalism and is weaponizing AI in order to create different sets of facts. Because of this process of automated and algorithmic personalization, we start having and engaging different media ecosystems with different types of information, to the point that we are entering what some people call a post-truth era, in which as long as it feels right, I think it's true, right? But if it doesn't feel right, I will just challenge it. Not wanting to go back, I mean, I have a few more examples about the US, but already Trump saying like, that's AI, right? Like one never wants to say like, that is not true. Now that's AI. Having all of these these were very easy, right? To tell that they were fake, mostly because we wouldn't think of Trump running. But these ones were not. And these ones were passed through TV. When the last, one of the last hurricanes in the US, these are fake. This is complete. These two are, well, all four are completely fake, but were passed in order to outrage people about the lack of support from the government. And here the problem is not so much the fact that there is fake stuff. It's the fact that we're producing so much fake stuff that it's impossible to tell what's true anymore. It gives us a permission structure for saying, well, I don't believe that. That obviously is fake. Because it's becoming more and more difficult to tell. One of my joyful pastimes, which is not so joyful, but whenever I see something on YouTube that I'm like, this is obviously AI, but it's so good that let me go to the comments, and then seeing how many people believe this and how a few start like, this is AI, right? We are at the moment where a lot of people cannot tell if a video is AI or not. Like, for me, sometimes it's also difficult, like, this must be AI, right? Like, the wolf and the kitten cannot be playing, right? Like, this has to be AI. So the problem, again, is not the fakes themselves. Is this environment that they are creating where we are allowed to decide what is true and what is not according to our political beliefs and our values. So it's about flooding the zone with crap. And the way that the data generation is happening This is just going to keep happening. And for most of us who engage with AI or are interested with AI, we can keep up. But there's a ton of people out there who are not equipped to tell the difference. So when reality splits, what happens? Well, we become separated and we become more and more polarized. So the question here, again, from a critical perspective, is how many things do we have to break? And here I just have some final terrible examples, but I will come up hopefully at the end with something positive. Here, one of the bigger problems is about what we think of double dependencies. We are starting to depend on AI to do certain things. The issue of de-skilling is a serious problem. The more that we use AI for menial tasks means that we are less equipped to do those tasks without it. But AI is dependent on us. It's dependent on our data. It's dependent on our processes. And it's dependent on its gatekeepers or its producers. The idea of having Grok go from a relatively okay chat box to Mecha Hitler, that happened in the span of basically one day. And this is because there was a change in the code about how to weight different type of information. So the moment that somebody who owns one of these models decides that it's going to change it, it can change it. There's things that cannot be easily changed, but there are these dependencies. We depend on the people who run the technology as much as we depend on people who use it. So this is a massive problem. It's not always necessarily bad. Sometimes there's changes that are made to try to make things more inclusive, to the point that it overcorrects, right? Making Nazi, like diverse Nazi soldiers, or the diverse founders of the US, right? So there are issues there even when AI is trying to be good. But maybe simply it's a technology that it's not ready. It's not ready for what we're trying to do. This is a case from last year, pretty much exactly to the date, November 13 of 2022, where a chatbot ended a discussion with a student that was writing a paper about how to help older patients with this quote: "This is for you, human, you and only you. You're not special, you're not important, and you're not needed. You are a waste of time and resources, you're a burden on society, you're a drain on the earth. You're a blight on the landscape, and you're a stain in the universe. Please die, please." This is a true chat where Gemini just went crazy. And we have several examples of kids getting so entangled with AI that they share their problems, and AI basically pushing them towards hurting themselves, killing themselves. We've seen quite a bunch of examples already on teen suicide due to these problems. And OpenAI admitting that sometimes it misses the mark. And this is this idea of moving fast and breaking things, and how do we have to organize ourselves to this. Is this okay to move this fast for breaking these things? There is a very cool report, cool in the sense that they are trying to do something about it, where they show how easy it is to trick ChatGPT into giving you harmful content, where all the guardrails are being easily tricked by asking, well, this is for a paper, like all these are getting a little bit better. So to end, I just give you something or somewhat of a positive alternative. And this is why I said that good AI, I didn't think that was particularly good enough. And it's because it focuses on the outcome. And responsible AI is an approach that tries to look at the process. It focuses on process and governance. I think that this is something that Alvaro has been also looking at, where it is not so much about the outcome, but the way that we go about it, making sure that the production of the AI systems carry certain values that are not originary from the Silicon Valley ethos, but rather from a different approach, something that probably most of us in this room would be more aligned with. And is this idea of bringing more of a human-centered and trust and ethical values in order to make sure that decision-making aligns with more democratic approaches. I'm not entirely sure if this is going to work or not, but there are certain core characteristics about this that I personally can get behind. I am not necessarily sure that this aligns well with some of the companies that are trying to do, but basically through regulation, these are the only ways of trying to tackle things, making sure that these companies are accountable, making sure that they are safe, making sure that they are transparent. And obviously this is not a very good business pitch, but at least it's a way that I can think that we have to move forward. If you think about how many governments are going to put up with reports that are containing all the wrong information, the moment that that becomes untenable, we'll need something like this, right? There's so many decisions that we can take and then acknowledge that all this information is incorrect. So hopefully this is a pathway forward that it's going to allow us to bring in AI into the current spheres of society. And with that, I'll thank you.